Tuxpan, Jalisco, a town whose motto is literally the Pueblo of the Eternal Fiesta, a place where history, faith, culture, and joy come together in one of the most unique and mesmerizing celebrations I've ever experienced. I had the incredible opportunity to visit Tuxpan at the beginning of February for the Feast of San Sebastián, a festival deeply rooted in the traditions of this town. This wasn't just any festival. It was a culmination of devotion, history, and community spirit that's been alive for centuries. But before I even got to experience the main event, I had the chance to immerse myself in the rhythm of this town through its food, its people, and its deeply ingrained traditions. From baking through the night with a master bread maker, to witnessing the energy of dancers practicing under the night sky, to experiencing the warmth of a town that celebrates its brotherhood as much as its saints. This was more than just a visit. It was an invitation into something truly special. Let's dive in. I arrived in Tuxpan on a Friday night after a long drive from Guadalajara and went straight to the home of Nicolas, a native of Tuxpan and a master baker who comes from a long lineage of bread makers. I had no idea what I was in for. Baking in Tuxpan is an art form, a ritual, a way of life. Nicolas specializes in birotes, a traditional Jalisco bread roll, and his entire night is dedicated to perfecting this craft. His family's bakery doesn't operate like a typical bakery. It's a night-long operation, starting at 7 p.m. when they mix the dough and let it rise until 12:30 a.m., when the real work begins. From shaping the rolls to carefully arranging them in ovens that Nicolas built himself, a masterpiece of physics and tradition, the process is mesmerizing. I tried my hand at shaping a few, and let's just say I was a little slower than the professionals. The work continued until 5:30 a.m., just in time for the community to wake up to fresh, crispy on the outside, fluffy on the inside birotes. And here's something I never realized before. A fresh birote straight out of the oven is a whole different experience. The crust cracks just right, the steam escapes, and the warmth of the bread itself feels like home. Keep an eye out for my full interview with Nicolas, where we talk about his passion for baking, the science behind birotes, and why traditions like these deserve to be preserved at 365 days of tequila. After a few hours of sleep, Ricky and I started our Saturday morning being treated to a fantastic breakfast by Nicolas and his family at La Indita, a beautiful restaurant in the center of town. The decorations of the restaurant exemplified Tuxpan's honoring of beautiful traditions and history. The meals we were served were varied and delicious. You can't go wrong on what you ordered here. Tuxpan is a town of artisans. Everywhere you look, history is honored through murals depicting legends, statues of the famous dancers, an undeniable sense of pride in their traditions. We walked through Tuxpan Centro admiring handcrafted tejuino stands, a drink that here is sweeter and less tart than in other regions, and murals that told stories of resilience, faith, and devotion. Nicolas guided us through it all, sharing details about the meaning behind the festival and the depths of Tuxpan's cultural legacy. That evening, Nicolas invited us to witness a practice session for the festival's traditional dances, and this was a moment filled with joy and excitement. We hung out and had a drink, the streets were blocked off, and the saint's image was placed on a mock altar. Family and friends gathered to watch, and then the rattles began. The dancers, or danzantes, burst into movement, jumping, stomping, chanting, laughing, yelling, and dancing with such energy that you could feel it in your chest. Even the kids couldn't resist joining in on the fun, running into the circle, mimicking the steps, absorbing the joy of their elders. The family and friends watched on with excitement and cheer. You could feel the energy and excitement about what was to come as the danzantes were building something beautiful, full of honor, tradition, and praise. The people of this town love one another and celebrate their brotherhood. These men work together, in sync, to create a presentation of physical devotion that spoke to my heart and soul. Even this practice session was an event radiating joy and a love of the past, the community of the present, and the hope for the future. This was just a practice session, and yet the hosts had prepared an entire feast, delicious pozole, for everyone. It was so good, and Ricky and I were honored to be part of such an experience. Inside the home of the host, people were making necklaces decorated with pink flowers and filled corn husks with pinole, a finely ground powder made from toasted corn that comes from the Nahuatl word pinoli, which means cornmeal, a gift for the dancers the next day, and bottles filled with ponche, juice of guava with alcohol, representing the heads that were cut off during the wars. They were also making flags, cutting rosemary and flowers for decorations for the altar the next day. This was more than just dance. It was unity, family, and devotion in motion. Sunday, February 2nd, the day everything led up to. We were dropped off at the center by Nicholas to watch the ceremony or parade begin. At 11 a.m., the church was packed. Dancers, musicians, and community members walked the streets. Various danzantes gathered in the church atrium and outside, waiting for the statues of San Sebastián to emerge after the Mass. Group after group gathered in the center in costume and performed their dances. They filled the space, alive with energy and community, and outside, under the hot sun, these costumed dancers began to dance and celebrate. They would be in costume, performing for the rest of the day. Some groups entered the church for blessings, while others waited outside due to the large number of participants. Music and mariachi played and added to the celebration. Then, at noon, the bells rang. Confetti filled the air. The statues of San Sebastián were lifted and carried into the streets. The energy of the festival exploded into motion. The danzantes began their journey toward the festival's main altar, which was set up in a designated house in the town. Some dance groups joined the procession, while others waited to integrate along the route. After arriving at the main altar, each San Sebastián and dance group returned to its respective altar in the different parts of Tuxpan. Around 1:30 p.m., the dancers completed their processions and arrived at their designated homes or altars. Traditional communal meals were served by the Capitán del Día, the person responsible for organizing food and hospitality for the dancers and community members. The meal is a moment for the dancers to rest and reflect on their devotion before the next part of the festival. While they rested, Ricky and I had lunch at a former train station on the edge of town that now serves tacos, called Doña Rosa. This place was also decorated to honor and celebrate the history of the community. We then made our way back to the center to meet up with Nicolas and the danzantes in his group. Around 3:30 to 4, each danzante group first performed their dance for their altar and then began a pilgrimage to other altars across the town. For hours, the dancers performed at different altars, receiving blessings, honoring their devotion, and celebrating in a whirlwind of color, movement, and music. Visiting multiple altars is part of the ritual of honor and gratitude. It's not a competition, but a celebration. Everywhere we turned, people were offering food, drinks, and hospitality. It wasn't a festival to be watched. It was a festival to be part of. Each group chooses its own route, and they try to visit as many altars as they can. But with over 50 altars throughout the town, it's impossible to visit all of the altars in one day. The community lined the streets to watch these celebrations at their altars, bringing out chairs, setting up food stalls, drinking, cheering, chanting, singing, watching, celebrating all of the dancers that came by. Each group of danzantes were dressed differently, honoring a different aspect of the culture. There were even some scary costumes not linked to any aspect of the culture, but instead were put on for fun. Their dances are unique and designed as a group. Each area has its own ponche that they give out to anyone who asks. Yes, I had a lot. Yes, it was delicious. As the afternoon sun turned to evening, the dancers continued their pilgrimage, visiting altars, performing one last round of powerful emotional dances. As the night came, the dancers gathered near the center and continued to dance and celebrate together before going their own ways and returning home. Between 8 and 9 p.m., each dance group returned to its home altar for their final dance of devotion. As they made their way home, they were cheered on and celebrated by the community. Despite hours in the sun, despite aching feet, despite sheer exhaustion, the final dances were the most intense, the most full of heart, as they symbolized the end of the festival and the renewal of faith. These smiles, this fun, that joy, it didn't stop even up to the last dance. Even as the night ended, the joy didn't stop. We found ourselves hanging out with Nicolas's family, swinging on the playground equipment, and soaking in the last moments of this incredible celebration. Tuxpan, Jalisco isn't just a town of celebration. It's a town of deep traditions, unwavering faith, and a love for life that's contagious. I didn't just witness this festival, I lived it. And that's the beauty of Mexico's cultural traditions. They're not just events. They're connections to history, to ancestors, to community, to joy. Tuxpan has left a permanent mark on my heart, and I know that the energy of this festival, the devotion of the dancers, and the kindness of the people will stay with me forever. This is Pato's Path. Like this video, press the subscribe button, and follow along to keep walking this journey together.